Yo, what's good, gamers? What's good? My name is Dr. Ryan Terao, and as always, we're joined by Casey. Casey, say hi.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here. But most
And today-
importantly, I'm excited we got a guest.
Yes, and today's Mind and Munchies +1 with the insightful and powerful Coach Yip, Coach Robert Yip himself.
Hi, Robert Yip. I am from Immortals. I'm the director of esports and performance here.
Nice. Well, welcome. We're so excited. What we do here is we start every session with a Thorns and Roses. And as the first guest, we're going to throw this to you, Robert. So what's been some thorns and some roses, some highlights and some lowlights of your week, man? What you been up to?
Thorns, 100%, is I'm going to Japan tomorrow. I don't travel very well. It's a thorn and it's a rose. Like, I'm not very good on the flight. If I can sleep on a flight, I'll feel great when landing. But I'm not looking forward to, what is it, like a 12, 13-hour flight?
Yeah.
Pretty long?
Yeah. Did you pay for like economy plus? That's the move. Right
When you're my height, every economy is extra legroom, so it's actually real nice. It's real good. No, honestly, traveling sucks for me, but looking forward to going to Japan. That's my rose. My thorn is I'm in the midst of my thesis for my postgrad for psychology. The psychology postgrad is kind of like the sports psychology postgrad that I did before, but without all the fun sports parts. It's just clinical. Yeah, kind of like slogging through, but actually it's going to be about esports. I'm kind of excited to start.
Nice. Yeah. I'm just visualizing your spreadsheet that you showed us for your trip to Japan, and that seems like a lot of fun, dude. From you like bouncing around, exploring, sleeping, and then like exploring some more.
30 minutes in each area, sprinting from place to place, like pushing Japanese people out of the way to get on the subway. Like,
as long as you throw your arms back like this and run, I think that's socially acceptable, right?
I probably move a little bit faster as well.
Better wind drag or something.
Yeah, you went to Japan, Casey, right? And
I've never been.
Ryan?
Ooh, yeah, I've been. I went last November. That shit is awesome. Except I learned how loud I am and not Japanese I am.
You learned that just in Japan.
Oh, I learned that also in Europe. That was funny. Like, oh yeah, you're really American. I'm like, I've never been described as an American before, but yes. That makes a lot of sense.
Do they not like you because you're American? Is that the...
No, they just do a lot of gun jokes and stuff at me, and I was like, yep, that's why we're so good at CSGO.
I made reservations kind of using like my Irish passport. You know, you have to put in your residency, and I can technically put in America because it's a green card, but I just put in Irish, just in case, maybe I will be received slightly better.
And they're like, Conor McGregor? Conor McGregor.
That happens so much, actually. Like, where are you from? Like, I live in a furthest away place from Conor McGregor. Like, oh, okay.
But Conor, right? You know him. You're the same pub?
Yeah. Same pub, same guy.
Same pub, yep. Same gym, absolutely.
Yeah, we work out in the same gym. I'm a sparring partner, actually. So
Did you get a reservation at that the Sushi Master? Like that thing that requires like months in advance to go to? There was a Netflix special about it. I can't remember.
I did the TikTok thing. I got a reservation at the omelet guy.
Nice. You have to video that. That's slice.
Yeah. The weird thing is for that is they sell out like very, very fast. The reservations go insta. So like they do it every Sunday at 11 in Japan. So it's like 7 p.m. here. So all my PC skills actually paid off. All the League of Legends that I played just to get it. Because the next week I went on Sunday, the entire week was booked out in 40 seconds.
Wow.
I just got lucky.
That's crazy.
How about you, Casey? How's your week? How's your thorns and your roses, man?
I'll say on the thorn side, it's kind of a little bit of a rose, but it's just been a really, really busy week. Like I've probably been putting in at least 12 hours a day, every single day, and my sleep has been significantly reduced this last week. It's just been really, really busy with work between a bunch of different things going on. I'm definitely noticing that I'm pounding back a little bit more of the coffee to try to filter. Like yesterday, my eye was like twitching, and I was like, okay, this is bad.
Oh, that's
like,
how you know it's working, bro.
Yeah, it's just been like really, really, really busy. Somewhat more like a real thorn was my motorcycle's still broken, but I am borrowing a truck this weekend, and I've decided I'm just going to take it in to get it repaired. I've decided it is beyond my skill level. I can no longer fix it. I fixed so many things on this motorcycle, but finally I'm giving up. I'm throwing in the towel. It's time for me to call a professional, get some real help, have them just take care of it. And what about you? What do you got going on, Ryan? Are you still skating?
Yes, I haven't fallen down yet. That's good. Although there were some close calls. It's been challenging, but all the things that I've been challenging myself to do are good things, like the skating thing or I'm trying to write this thing now or put out this program. So I'm like beginning the introduction of clinical psychology book that I want to put out. So I'm starting that, and that's just so reminding my dissertation. I remember when I wrote this 300-page thing and I want to shoot myself, but here we're doing it again. So here we go. And then the editing, Photoshop or Adobe, I learned how to make captions pop in and out, doing all this kind of stuff. So finally, like, okay, it's all coming together. More roses than thorns, I guess, but all the banging my head against the wall seems like it's coming to fruition. And now the biggest rose is this conversation at the end of the week to cap it all off.
Can I ask a small little question to both of you guys, actually? There was just a faculty meeting for both of the universities where I teach, and they were finally acknowledging the AI tools that are out there, like ChatGPT and so on. They're noticing that lots of students are turning in their homework with just answers auto-filled from basically ChatGPT. And so they have these like scanners and things to try to catch it, but they don't really know how to because it's getting better. So the flags are becoming less accurate. My question for both of you, are either of you guys leveraging any kind of AI tools to help you out with this?
No.
No? Okay. Just
Maybe
old school.
Like,
Old school, just doing
point
it.
is like, no,
Maybe I
of course
should
not.
have. No, I mean,
Because I've seen people do it where it's like, okay, I just want to structure it. Like, give me a sample outline or something, and then I'll fill in the blanks, or whatever. I don't know. I'm just asking if that's something you guys have been trying to utilize to help, speed you guys along.
I'm more old school, and I think if I did use it, I would feel like I cheated. That's what I would think.
I'd
Just
like
me
to have the moral
producing
high
my
ground like that,
Yeah.
like Ryan does. I am the guy that was like, when Vine came out, it's like, nah, it's just a fad. It's just going to go away. And then Instagram came out like, nah, it's just a fad. It's going to go away like MySpace. And then TikTok came out like, once again, a fad. I missed every single trend. Like, I just miss it. I'm blindsided by it completely. So, like, for AI, I was like, I know it's not a fad, but it's like, I'm just so behind the curve when it comes to stuff like this that I just haven't been able to get on top of it. Even my mom's using it now, and I just feel so far behind the times. So she's using it for, like, her life. Like, let's make protein muffins. And then it spits out a recipe. And she's like, oh, I want protein muffins that have, like, this in it. And it spits out a slightly different recipe. And then she makes it. Like, that's how you're meant to use it, really.
That's
not for...
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've used it to like, for example, like what's the best hashtags to like post this content? Or like what's the best hashtag for us to find our stuff? But I haven't used it to like write me, think of esports psychology introduction. Like I haven't done that yet. Another TikTok thing when they said, oh, the schools are seeing more AI generated things.
Yeah.
I saw another thing where the teacher's like, yeah, let them use it and bring it in. And then we have to talk about it and critically break it down of why it looks like this. Because you can't stop them from writing it, but what you have to do is challenge their ability to critically think instead of just spitting it out. And I was like, oh, I like that. Debate it, talk about it, because they're going to use it. I mean, they're going to use it. So
It's kind of interesting.
Leverage it.
You guys probably both saw the show. It was to do with the doping situation.
Icarus!
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Fucking
So
love
it's
that
like one of my favorite movies.
Oh, I love Icarus.
The AI part is kind of like the universities have to keep up with the cheaters. It's kind of like an arms race for detection and making better AI at this point.
You can use an AI to detect AI.
Oh my god! And then they both become self-aware and like they just agree to like, don't worry, I won't rat you out. You don't rat me out.
Actually, yeah.
It's the start of Terminator, I think.
But no one thought about the Terminators that might be on our side.
Do you want to hear my 4D plot twist for the Terminator 2 movie?
For Terminator 2,
Yes.
okay, Judgment Day, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's
Best
the good
one,
one.
by
in
the
this
way.
one.
Best
Yeah,
one.
I love that one.
In the end, he's trying to start Skynet. He needs it to happen. He's like, this has to happen, right? So he's like, yeah, this is just how it's supposed to go. So in my mind, he was sent back by Skynet, so Skynet would become active. But actually, the T-1000 was sent back by humans who are actually a lot more advanced to try and stop Skynet from actually happening, because it was raggedy old, kind of crappier version because it was losing.
So it's like double agents.
Yeah. And in the end,
Interesting.
it should be like an M. Night Shyamalan bit of a twist where the human one was a good one.
That would be a better twist than how it actually went down, honestly.
Yeah. Did you guys ever see the Rick and Morty episode with time travel and like the?
Which one?
Yeah.
No, it's the only one with time travel because they refuse to do time travel. So it's the one with sentient snakes or whatever. So it's funny because
Oh, yes, that's right. They throw the earth snake into the snake colony and they're like trying to figure out where the snake came from, right?
yeah, and
Yeah, yeah.
but then what happens is like because they actually do invent time travel, what happens is they send like a Terminator back to kill the other thing, and then they send another Terminator back to kill that thing, and they send another one to kill that one, and then it's like there's just literally Terminators dropping from the sky,
Yeah.
like they're raining all at this one time point because everybody's like, okay, we got to get one step ahead of it, I love the OG, like the first season was so good. First season so good.
Chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Keep summer
Amazing.
safe. Yes.
Yeah.
With our featured big brain downstairs, Master, Doctor.
Master. I don't think I have the brain for a PhD. As in, like I've seen too many of my friends go into doing a PhD, and then I see them afterwards. I'm like, oh my god,
You've aged.
they look like they're on their fifth kid, kind of a situation. I'm like, oh no, I'm single, I'm unmarried, I don't have any kids.
I feel like master sounds more
I
impressive than
was thinking
doctor.
that too.
I would rather be a master.
Master Chief, yeah,
Yeah.
I'd rather do that too.
Just saying.
Master Robert, tell us, how did you like get into esports? How did you end up here? What is the origin story?
A hit marker job application. No, it was not that.
I was like, wait, that's gonna be epic. Please, yes, go on.
Yeah, no.
We're looking for
I'll
a
tell you
graphic
about how
designer,
I filled out
actually.
a form. Yeah. Graphic design is my passion. I went to school for physical education in the UK, and I was doing sports psychology, sports science, coaching modules. I'm like, hey, I like this more than teaching. And I thought to myself, I can get into teaching when I'm older because the experience will lend me towards being a better teacher. So I started doing that, graduated, wanted to work with teams, so did a strength and conditioning CSCS qualification. Realized that they would tell me all of their problems with home, the coach, their teammates. And I was like, there's a missing component here that I was not aware of. So I looked to see where I could do a sports psychology master's, and I did that in Ireland. After that, I was like, my friend was trying to get me into esports for a long time for StarCraft, and I was like, nah, I'm good, bro. This is 2011 when StarCraft was like popping
Banging.
off. He sent me like a couple of links, and I watched it, and I was like, like I'm just watching people like just visibly tilt on stage or like feel really nervous or just be very emotional in general, and it seems to be well set up, decently funded, but not well supported. And I reached out to a bunch of teams, and Team Liquid got back to me. He says I might have a guy who's interested, and that was Dario, who's TLO, the little one. Started kind of like just working with him on the side because it wasn't really a space where coaches got paid in StarCraft, and League didn't really have coaches or paid coaches. So I did that till 2015. I did a presentation at a coaching summit for periodization in esports. And actually, I worked with Origin that summer. I helped them out. I had an interview with Noah for Immortals and Dylan. And they're like, hey, we're building something. And I didn't know too much about LCS at the time, but I did a few interviews and they liked it. And I remember they called me. I'm in Ireland at the time. We're interested. Do you want to come to LA? It's like a scene from a movie. I'm on my phone, and then I open up my curtain slowly, and it's like pouring rain, like just the worst rain you've seen. Normal day. Just on the phone, just like, yeah, I'd like to move to LA. Push the curtain back again. And then he's like, all right, we'll see you. And then I've been working in LEC and LCS since then. Mostly as a performance coach, partly as a head coach. The performance side is something that's always like interested me because I've been on like so many different teams, so many different players from so many different backgrounds, and I've gotten more into like how to make a team work than how to make the individual work, as I've actually realized like the environment itself, the setup, the hierarchy, delegations, role clarity, because everyone is affected by their environment a lot more. So that's how I started it, and I've touched on like a bunch of esports from League, Dota, FIFA, Counter-Strike, everything pretty much, Valorant.
All right, as like director of performance at Immortals, if you had full authority, power, control over constructing a team, how would you do it? Like, what are the qualities in people or skills? Like, how do you balance all those things? Because I'm guessing someone like you wouldn't say, Ryan, I just look for the top players in each role and I pick those ones, and then I create this super team, and then I find the best coach.
Just pick the top 5 people on the ladder all the time. It's going to work 100% of the time, right?
4 supports and an AD. It's like, that'll do.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's going to work. It's going to work great. Trust.
For any team, it's a lot easier when you have a track record of like doing well for yourself. As in, like, if you have someone who has shown like capacity in the past to like pick rosters, it's a lot easier to trust that guy, because for the most part, it becomes like a process where like everyone's giving opinions and things. When you're in those situations, it's kind of trying to figure out like if we can find the best fit for everyone, so everyone's kind of happy with it. To go back to your point about picking the best players, often the best players don't make the best team, but there's like a benchmark, a prerequisite of like mechanical ability, or when you're indexing towards certain stats that you need in order to be like a good pro. So if I start off with you, Ryan, for example, I'm going to look at the full like 1 HP team and be like, all right, Ryan is this sort of a player. I know him quite well. Which would be the best player to place around him to augment him that will cover his weaknesses, or like even just augment his strengths. If you're a heavy carry player and Elliot is a good facilitator player that like likes to help.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. He's not that much. He's a solo adventurer. I haven't played with him, but I need to. But like basically trying to figure out like how not to get the best pieces, but how to get the most out of the pieces that you have. And sometimes like the best fit for your team isn't the next best player. It could be like the third or fourth or fifth best player because he actually augments your team a lot more. That's like how I truly feel about like roster creation. It's like more about the fit. Even like how coaches do draft, you get your 1, 2, 3, and then like for your 4 or 5, it's like let's just get a good counter pick. Let's get a strong 4 or 5. But I think it's about getting more like how can you get your 4 or 5 so that it actually like augments what you have. If you're full dive at that point, you're not going to draft champions that don't play into that narrative. And I think that teams that have a really strong idea about like what identity they want to have, hopefully IMT are going to have that. As soon as the season was over, we were just in super long meetings with the staff that we have carrying over to try and figure out like what we value and what kind of players work in that situation. So like if you have a player who doesn't want to work hard, but we value working hard, then it's like that guy's going to be gone in a year or sooner, or we're just going to feel resentment because he doesn't share our ideas. It's trying to figure out who we think would work in that system. Thematically, it's really important to have the correct players. I've had teams whereby scrims are over, they do the review, they instantly spin around their chair and they just load up solo queue. There was no talk about like, hey, we're going to stay after hours and play solo queue. It's just who they are. It's to what they would do irrespective of teammates, irrespective of like rules or culture on the wall. They did it anyway. It's trying to find those players. If you're a team that values like being social, hanging out, building camaraderie, you don't want guys that instantly clock out at 5.
So in that sense, like, do you start with a player? Do you start with the coach? Do you start with your piece? Where does that even start?
It depends. Ideally, you want to start with a coach. You don't want to start with players, and then you just like copy and paste your coach after you built a roster, and you're like, here you go, I made this for you. And he's like, wow, I'm allergic to like all of these things. Like, this is not for me. You want to do a little bit of both, especially if you're starting from scratch. If I already have a coach and it's Coach Casey, then I'll obviously work with him to try to build a team that he wants to coach, players that have the same shared values. But if you have nothing, then you kind of do both at the same time. You kind of look at players, you look at coaches, you try and figure out like who would work with who. You look like player and coaching histories and figure out like when they were successful and why they were successful. Was it because they had a full authoritarian coach? Was it because they had a coach who was a good facilitator? Was the coach indexing high on game knowledge but low on social? Cool. We need an assistant coach that can kind of like balance that out, etc. A lot of those things like play a part, but at the end of the day, people can interview very well. They can say the right things. They can say, I'm a hard worker and I'm coachable. And then they come in and like, I'm not playing that and I'm not playing solo queue. They can kind of say what they want. So it's trying to figure out from their history and from what they say. And if you can kind of like read people that, hey, I think this guy will be a good fit for the program for next year. And it's important for multiple people to be looking at different things, like to index towards different things. I'll be looking at attributes of a player in a different way compared to like other people that are in the offseason preparing for us. And I think that the problem can sometimes be that maybe you have like one person who's doing it, who's like highly indexing towards something that maybe not be super key, or maybe doesn't have enough background knowledge or isn't endemic enough to the space to understand the context behind successes and failures.
I'm really curious, how big is the scoutable pool in League? Like you said, there's a base level of requirement. Are people scraping the bottom of the barrel by the time we get to the last team in LCS or whatever? Or is the scoutable pool is actually like thousands and thousands of players deep, and you kind of have your pick of the crop and it's more about picking those? Like, I'm curious how big the scoutable pool really is.
It kind of depends. Like if you had an academy team, you can take more risks. You can bring up someone that maybe doesn't have experience or is like from solo queue specifically. Yeah. For LCS, it's probably safer or better to like pick guys that have LCS experience, have played in academy, have played in minor regions. It's quite rare for someone to go straight from solo queue to LCS. Danny had a huge, really fast rise from where he was to getting LCS. Mike Young came directly from school in solo queue. I think he like finished high school or something and then was instantly on P1. And
what a dream! What a dream!
I know he won Rookie of the Split. It's rare for that to happen, and I think that it depends on like the players you have around you, right? If you have very good players around you, you can make the jump, but to go from solo queue to LCS is quite a long jump to make. Someone might be able to correct me or like DM me or tweet me or something. But like if there was a player that actually made that jump in LCS, for example, I think in LEC the baseline of your average player is just generally a little bit higher. But I think everyone has to go through the ERL academy system in LEC. It's quite hard. But I think in terms of like scoutable players, I think often we conflate age to experience. And I think biological age is not as important because you can pick up players who are 21, 22 in League and have only been playing for a while. And if you look at their age, you go, he's not that good. He's kind of old. He didn't start when he was 17. But maybe he picked up League 6 months ago and now he's Challenger. That's quite a rise to play a game, kind of like commit to it and be Challenger after 6 months. I've seen players like that. If you're quite experienced, sometimes you can kind of get stuck in your ways. You can kind of get stuck in this is how I do things. This is how I want to play. And I'm kind of like unchangeable and movable. But if you are a little bit lower experienced but older, it's like, oh, I'm willing to play whatever. I'm down to play whatever. The real secret is people used to think that players were washed by 24, 25. But there's so many players now, once you started getting into 26, 27, 28, core JJ, older, playing well, performing well, nobody talks about age anymore. It's like, what? How old is he? It's like, you never ask an esports player over 25 their age. You know that.
So is there a chance for us to
say,
start
Casey,
the core of the team?
that's what
Yeah,
I've
man.
heard. I've heard
that
there's a
questions?
chance, bro.
I can't
That's what
believe
I've
you
heard.
guys are
There's a
leading
chance.
questions.
Okay.
I'm not one to quash streams, so I'm going to tell you the same thing I told Elliot. It's like, welcome to the team.
Hey, let's go. So, you know, Casey, there's the Golden Bachelor, and now there's Golden League. I think that's where we,
God.
the senior citizens, can play League together. That'd be fun, right? I think that'd be a wild game, bro.
We
Just
can
running it down.
That's what Clash is invented for. The Golden Bachelor is happy.
Let's do it. Let's start it, man.
So when people say like, oh, Ryan, like, I don't think I'll ever make it because I'm just too old and blah, blah, like, how old are you? I'm 25. Okay, like, are you training, though? Do you have, like, the actual, like, methods or process to go pro? No, just because I'm so old, bro, they'll never look at me. Robert, what do you have to say to that?
It's hard. I think if you're older, for example, you probably need to have some experience because there's no age gate for League. It's just really down to like skill and experience. It doesn't mean you will get scouted, but if you're good enough, you're good enough. You can still kind of like be competing in areas, but you need to find a way to like showcase what you have. I was talking to an academy player yesterday morning, and I was explaining to him how to get noticed. He was like, I'm going to hit rank 1. I'm like, okay. There's always someone at rank 1. There's always someone going to hit rank 1. They're always going to tweet about it, but that's not what's going to get you noticed. We talked about his competition for his role, who's there, who would potentially be in the running for a spot that he might want to go for, what their strengths are, what his strengths are, how he can differentiate himself from those other people. When people are thinking about him, they don't just go, oh yeah, I guess he's okay. They go, oh, I hear he's really good at this, or he's actually really good at this. It's about trying to find your unique selling points, what makes you different from someone else, and then
Damn.
Your USP. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In that same sense, that when you hear people say, oh, it's just my age, do you think that's like a mental block, or this is the thing that makes it not possible?
It depends how you look at it. You can like reframe it, right? I'm 25. I have a lot more experience. I'm more mature. I'm able to focus on what I do. A lot of the things that maybe are afflicting like younger people, when you're 25, it's like, oh, I grew out of it. I'm just more mature. I take it seriously. I treat it like a job. I'm a professional. If you look at it that way, then that's fine. But I think that some people will still look at age and go, I know he's good, but also this 17-year-old is also good. When someone has an unknown potential, they equate that to unlimited potential. And that's not fair, because having an unknown potential does not mean that you have an unlimited potential. The same as being a 25-year-old that has a relatively set ceiling. It's like, oh, I can see how good he is, but it's that new thing. It's kind of looking at like a newer player and thinking, okay, he could be the best player in the world, or he could be average, but I don't know, and I kind of want it. It's a novelty bias, really. It's like this new thing. I already know about the 25-year-old. I've seen him play.
The shiny
good.
new.
Yeah, sometimes like seeing a player and knowing what he brings is good, because it might be that missing fifth piece for your roster that actually makes everything tick. There's been a lot of examples of teams that have gone from bottom 2, replace one player or 2 players, and then they go to Worlds or to go second place. Excalibur, a good example. They changed mid and jungle, and they went from, I think, 9th place to 2nd place in the LEC, just past split. Big pieces to change for sure, changing like your mid jungle. I think that you can make these changes and find success. It's about trying to figure out how the pieces that you currently have, how they best function and what they need.
Us old people, now that we like coach younger players, do you think we would have done things differently? For example, if we were our players and some older person's like, hey, do you want to like maybe sleep more? Like, hey, I want to like actually like be intentional how you budget your time, be intentional how you practice these skills, or you know how you talk about these things, or maybe change some of these mindsets. Do you think you would have listened to yourself or us?
We're meant to say yes, Casey, right?
I think we're supposed to say yes to give ourselves some measure of credibility and clout. But I think there are some aspects where I think I would listen to myself, and there are some other aspects where I think I would not listen to myself. There were definitely periods where I was definitely a degenerate, right? But I think where I had real serious like personal investment in something, I was very willing to listen to whoever it was. So I think the measure of my listeningness depends on the measure of like the actual impact. I was never good enough to go pro for esports or traditional sports or anything like that. When I was in high school, I played badminton, and they put me on they put me on the varsity team immediately because the net was like up to here on me, so I could just smack it down. Camera doesn't show, but I'm 6'5". And it was just a bunch of I'm 6'5".
Holy.
It's like a bunch of tiny Asians at my school who were playing badminton, and it's like their heads at the net, and I'm just like coming over, and I just stand there and I just keep doing this. So they threw me on varsity immediately, and that was fun for me, right? But I really didn't give a shit. Like if I lost, it's like I'm just doing this for fun. I had no aspirations of going badminton pro, you know. Once I had my real 9 to 5 where I was salaried, I had like medical benefits and all this kind of stuff. I was actually like a real adult. That's where I started caring. That really put a switch in me. I was like, I can't get like even like an hour of less sleep than I should. Like I do much worse the next day. But when I was like my part-time jobs during college and stuff, like I didn't really care. It's like, if you fire me from this, I really don't give, I'm going to go work at the bookstore. It doesn't matter. I think the caring really determines whether or not I would actually listen.
That's so funny. You're 6'5", just smacking the Asian kids with the Batman shuttle.
Yeah, it's true. I did that. Yeah.
They're just hopping around trying to smash the ball.
I took 2 steps and I was on one side of the court to the other side of the court. Like I didn't have to move at all. Like I'm just like, all right, I'm literally like the border's right there. Like... Yeah, they gotta hustle. We progressed pretty fast because I was on a doubles team.
Which was actually a singles team that the other person was sitting in the corner playing.
Yeah, kind of is. We had a good time with it, but we progressed pretty fast. But once we actually played people who actually really knew how to do it, like I got smoked. Like I was never really good. Like I just was leveraging this one thing that I had going for me, which was I was tall. And once we played real people, I think they ended up being like the CIF champions or something like that. Like, it was like 0 points on our side. Like the real talent really showed.
How about you, Master Yip? Would you have listened to yourself?
I remember taking certain things seriously. If it came to like the day before a match, if it was anything involving training, I would always try to get good sleep and eat properly and hydrate before. I take training like really seriously. So like we used to do a conditioning day Thursday where all the other athletes from all the other teams would be there for uni. I treated that like I'd be there like 30 minutes beforehand, like warming up. Like I treat that seriously because I wanted to look good in front of everyone. The more eyes, the more seriously I took it. And when it came to like college and stuff, it was kind of dependent on like the module. I like stats. I like the psychology modules and coaching. Like anything like that, apart from social psychology, that's
wild stuff. Love
that's
that.
wild stuff. But yeah, I just like you kind of like jump into it, you kind of get lost in it. You kind of like want to do well. You don't like the feeling of being tired or being like run down. Coffee is a godsend. I didn't have my first coffee till I was in America, actually. I think that yeah, as you get older, you kind of like realize that like how important sleep is and how it actually affects you. I think when younger players stay up a bit later, they don't really feel the effects of sleep. Part of that is because you are younger and it doesn't hit you as hard, but part of that is you spend so much of your time consistently at a kind of like a fatigue
tired,
state.
Yeah.
You get used to it. You
This is
actually
normal,
get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your body just says, I'm not going to make you feel super miserable because we're just doing this every day.
Yeah, this is normal. It's like, please don't hurt me. For the amount of people that say like, yeah, I didn't sleep very well. It's like, okay, you are in control of that. You just have to do certain things that are kind of boring. There's nothing sexy about getting good sleep. It's actually like very easy, but it's difficult in the sense that it requires like a little bit of discipline and structure and practice. The instant gratification monkey is telling you to like play another game or watch Netflix or hang out with your friends, but most of your friends are not pro gamers earning a lot of money. Their job is not as performative, so they can kind of do whatever they want. And I know like pro gaming can be very solo adventure, even on a team, because maybe you don't like your teammates as much, so you're hanging out with your friends, give you that social aspect. Scrims, play solo queue. Oh, cool! I have 2 hours of my day to myself. No other job is like that. I remember I saw this cheese wheel segmented of like what athletes do in the day, and there's like you had Serena Williams, you had Roger Federer, and it's like a bit of training here and then some lunch and working on my business ventures, hanging out with friends and family, a little bit more training here, and then free time. That's for a traditional sports athlete. Then they had one for Faker, and it was just like sleep 5 hours on a good day, and then like training here, maybe grab a bite to eat, training here, nighttime training here, and it was like you can just see the amount of work that you have to put into esports. It's just one of those things where, once again, not gated by physical limitations. I think that it's hard to say that NA players are lazy because they don't work as hard as Koreans, because to graduate from the Korean League of Legends school, basically, it's not an actual school, but you have to showcase that you're able to work a lot, like all those hours. So if you can't work 12, 14 hours a day, probably, you will kind of be pushed out to the side, and someone else younger who works harder will catch up and kind of replace you. It's not that they're all good because they practice that much. That definitely is like a very important aspect, but it's just like you're not going to find many Korean players that are very good and they practice like less. It's like the normal, hey, you need this in order for us to like pass you. So and their player pool is bigger as well, so that's why it kind of like it's self-perpetuating.
So when you say like they work harder, is it like, do you think it's just time in game spent, or is it that they actually have like intentional progress in the game?
It's probably both. It's like you're working harder, you're also working more intensely because your spot is always like in question, or your coach is holding you accountable maybe, or like it's a combination of things. Like the actual culture, the work ethic that they have even outside of esports is like very, very strong. Like you think about the academia aspect in Korea, and it's so cutthroat. It's like very, very difficult. Like
the beauty standards is another example of that.
It's another one. And like these are standards that like as a kid you kind of understand, like if I have to achieve in something, I have to give it my all, and by all, like I have to sacrifice everything. There's been a lot of problems with countries or institutions trying to copy and paste what one country does to another because it doesn't fit. The body rejects the organ transplant because culturally, I remember when I was in the UK studying physical education, we were talking about how they tried to copy stuff from Australia and it didn't quite work in the UK, like from a sporting development perspective, because it's just a different culture. I don't think you can just tell players in NA to work as hard as Koreans and that's how we catch up, because burnout's going to be a factor. It's going to be an issue where players are struggling more. And that doesn't mean they're any worse players or lesser people. It just means that their capacity to work as hard isn't as much. And you see that across different sports where we talk about like Michael Jordan or Kobe and like how much they work, etc. And can't just tell all the other players in the NBA, just work as hard as Kobe did. Like just do that. It doesn't quite work like that. It's a very armchair analyst kind of an approach.
Is the definition of balance different for each culture, for example? Because the Korean balance, if you were to say, okay, I work like 13, 12 hours a day, and then I go sleep for like 3 hours and come back and say hi to my friend and passing and we go back, I feel balanced. Versus if you go to US and you see like Serena Williams and she has the training and the business ventures and the hanging out with friends and then free time. Okay, that's balanced for me. Do you think balance is more of like an individualized definition, or is it a definition that we just kind of get lost in the sauce?
I want to piggyback on that question too really fast. So like in addition to that, if you can also answer this. So how would you manage a situation where you have a team where you have a bunch of people from a bunch of different countries and it's like, okay, I have like 2 Korean players, I got 1 EU player, and I got 2 NA players. How do I set up the training schedule in such a way that it appeases everyone? Is that just an effort and futility? Like, would you never recommend that? And you should only have people within one culture group on the same team.
Like the Koreans are like doing solo queue and the 2 US players like, see, you're gonna eat chicken, bye.
It kind of depends on people's ability to put themselves in the shoes of the other people. Maybe Ryan, all he knows is playing solo queue. He doesn't know about like VODs and stuff. He just plays solo queue a lot and that's his thing. And he's got great success that way. Maybe Casey, you like playing solo queue. You give it your all in like in scrims and stuff like that, but you're not going to play till midnight. Maybe that's your thing. And maybe you play better because of that. You have to kind of think about when a player says, oh, I just play better because I'm happier when I eat hamburgers. It's like, is that something that they've kind of convinced themselves of, or is that actually something real? Like everyone has these like idiosyncrasies that will
players
make
are so
feel better.
Oh
my god, they're incredibly superstitious.
Yeah. Especially about food. Sorry, I could talk about that for like hours.
Their favorite meal. It's like, oh, I won with this meal. I want this meal again next time. Then they lose with the meal. It's like that meal is dead to me.
Terrible.
I need a new favorite meal for winning. But like for you, Ryan, what exactly do you do when you have a hard day at work, or you're working really hard, or you notice you are? What do you do to balance? And by balance is like not 50-50. It's what do you need to do in order to like cover the debt of the work so that you're not in the red for the next day?
Doom scrolling or hanging out with the wife and dog. Just like stepping away from the computer and like doing something else that I either find more interesting or holds my attention, or something that I find more fun and enjoyable, I think.
Doom scrolling is just perpetually scrolling?
Lay on bed.
Oh.
Doing research on TikTok.
Research. Yes, I do. My wife does a lot of research.
Okay, so you're like basically turning off your brain because your brain is so active from work.
Yes.
Okay.
Especially with my ADHD brain just bouncing all over the place, I need something where I can just like lay for a little bit.
Not all minds who wander are lost.
Wow, that's so deep.
And it's never lost.
Is that
right?
Wait, is that Gandalf or?
I'm freaking stealing that from Lord of the Rings, but
I was like, that's Gandalf. Yeah. I was like, wait a second, that sounds familiar.
That's a Robert TM right there.
I was like, I'm pretty sure I recognize that from.
I got on my screen around me. I've got just a list of quotes from movies and stuff. This is like I'm stealing from right now.
If you can dream it, you can do it. Yeah.
I've got the Any Given Sunday speech ready to go over on my left.
That's a good one. Damn, that's a good one.
Casey, like for you, like what do you like to do to, I guess, like balance the books?
I, at heart, am really like a huge introvert. Like I have to be extroverted for my job, and kind of do a lot of one-on-ones with people, and I go talk and I speak at universities and all this other kind of stuff. But that is such a like physiological drain for me. I am so dead after doing a presentation at a conference or something, and that just obliterates any kind of willpower to go do anything when I'm done with that. The first thing is I need to not be around people. So I just need to like be away, spend a lot of time with the dog, spend some time with the wife. I just need to go sit in a corner and read a book real fast, or something like that.
Okay. What are your thoughts, or both your guys' thoughts on active versus passive recovery for yourselves, and then like for, I guess, like for esports players?
I've never thought about it in the sense of mental. Like, I believe about it in physical stuff because that's what we've done before. I've done that for training, like active recovery, go for a walk or whatever, but I've never thought of that and tried to apply that to mental stuff. Sometimes if I do the game thing like Casey, I would qualify as like, okay, that's active recovery. I'm using my brain kind of. It's in a different context, a more fun one. But if it doesn't go the way that I want, I get tilted, bro. And it's like, now I'm doubly as upset and frustrated. So I would have to find an activity maybe like Casey's, maybe like a one-player game. I think that's my problem. If I do something more active, like trying to chew on something else and it doesn't go the way that I want, then now I feel like I'm doubly as tired.
I think the degree of the tiredness or the energy expended will dictate what I do for myself personally. Like if I'm completely tapped, then I do passive recovery. I'm going to go take a nap. I'm going to sleep for 12 hours. I'm going to just like go sit down and do nothing. But then like, oh, I'm going to go hang out with a couple friends, go eat some food. And then I always walk away from those feeling refreshed and feeling like it was good. So there's a little bit of a disconnect between what I think might actually be best for me and what actually is best for me. I kind of acknowledge that, but I'm just being completely 100% transparent right now. But on the physical side, I mean, I will try to do more active recovery kind of stuff. But there are some days where I'm just like so beat that I can no longer do things. If I can just like go for a walk, I'm a huge fan of like the saunas. If I can do those things, like I always know I feel better on the back end from it. Usually sleep is my go-to fix for a lot of things. If I have some extra time and I need some recovery, I'm going to go take like an hour nap, or I'm going to allow myself to sleep in an extra hour, those kind of things. What about you?
I think it's very individual. I think 9 times out of 10, it's like a social interaction after you've done something taxing but solo, I think is always really good. When you mentioned like speaking at a conference, that's a intensely public solo experience. Your nervous system and everything is probably a little bit like an overdrive at the time. I think there, vegging out, lying down in your hotel room and like doing nothing probably feels great because like you're just overloaded with things. But I think that the more time we spend alone, the more we should kind of reach out or be open to interacting with other people. That's the part that maybe we're missing, or we're still social creatures. We still need it. And I think like in esports, there's like a fake sense of, oh, but we're being social. We're a team. We're 5 people. Like, yeah, like I'm not even looking to my left or my right. I'm just constantly looking ahead. Like we're talking. We're not actually interacting with each other. We're interacting with things on the screen. Players don't really feel like they want to hang out with your teammates sometimes because they feel like they already are, or maybe that's even the source of their stress, but they need to hang out with their team in a non-stressed environment in a situation where it's not predicated around League of Legends. I try to, or like I think that forcing that is actually important because their natural tendency is to avoid said conflict or area of frustration. And scrims is not always a very enjoyable place because you are performative against good teams and everyone's trying hard to win, but they have different opinions and they're playing at full pace. Like it's not like you can kind of go through like a synchronized swimming routine. Okay, guys, we're going to do it at like half pace. We're going to learn it. It's like, no, we're going to do it while the enemy is trying to kill you. It's stressful. That's why I mentioned active versus passive recovery, because sometimes the doom scrolling or whatever for players is not a very effectual way of recovering from what just happened, especially if you have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes between a scrim, or you have 5 minutes to like reset yourself, right? You do it because you force yourself to do it, but there are things that you can do to kind of like trick yourself. But for me, I love going to the gym. I love playing soccer. I've gotten into ARAMs. Before I was no ARAMs, ranked only. And it was actually Parth that got me into ARAMs a few years ago. He's like, hey, you want to play an ARAM? And I was like, what's ARAM? He's like, what?
The funnest game mode ever.
Yeah. There's a pretty like tangible like high elo ARAM, and I remember I played with a friend who only played ARAMs, and he's like, yeah, I'm in high elo ARAM. I'm like, okay, whatever.
What does that mean?
I don't know what it meant, but going from my elo ARAM where people are like, oh, this is fun, like we're just like trading stuff, it's fine. From minute 1, you have people just absolutely ham-fisting each other until the end. Like I've never played a game that's more animal than that in my life. And he's like, yeah, all of my games are like that. And his quote is like, that's ARAM, baby. No matter what happens, it's like the guy hits a snowball, ints himself, like, that's ARAM, baby. Or,
that's ARAM, baby.
One guy takes a 1v4 and he dies, like, that's ARAM, baby. And I started adopting that myself. So whatever happens, that's ARAM, baby. Like, it's for good and for bad. And like, doesn't make it really enjoyable when, and I learned the rules about ARAM as well. Like, you don't end on your first push if you can, you know, you kind of milk it out a little bit more. No, it's really fun. I feel like seeing when like pro players are like maybe playing ARAMs with their teammates because it's a for fun. It's a social kind of thing that you do, and trying to create more situations where they can socially be themselves and not be judged off of like, you know, how good their fingers are or game knowledge is, I think is really nice. I usually like to start off every year with having the time where it's not a game boot camp. It's you don't scrim. It's like a person boot camp. I get to know both you guys first before I play. It's like the halo effect. It's like if my first impression of you is good, then I'm more likely to equate every subsequent impression of you with a slightly more positive tint. Whereas if it's bad in the beginning, I'm like, oh my god, like Ryan inted me. Every interaction.
That's
after
A-Round, baby.
That's A-Round, baby. No, we're scrimming, Ryan. Yeah, don't miss in 2 weeks. It doesn't work that way.
That's A-Round, baby.
Yeah, it's like, okay.
We need some shirts. We need some shirts. That's A-Round, baby.
The worst one for ranked is when someone's like, oh, I thought this was a normal. It's like,
Oh, I love that.
no, this is going to be bad. But basically, if I have a good interaction with you, Ryan, everything after that is going to be like, yeah, like he died, but like it's fine. Like I know why he died. But if I have a bad interaction with you in the beginning, I'm like, this guy. It's going to be like, yeah, he's a griefer. You try to explain why you died. No, let me tell you. Like, you're just
It
a
doesn't
griefer.
matter, bro. Yeah, because you suck. Yeah, at the end.
Yeah, I always impress onto players or staff that your first impression is like so important going forward.
I feel like there's so much of that social connection missed just I mean, if you compare just the generation after us, right? Like you go like 1 decade above us. I got to imagine that both of you guys, you know, you had school, you were interacting with people and you had friends and whatever, you did hangouts and all that kind of stuff, right?
Friends.
Exactly. I mean, I had a very small friend pool, but like you still had them at school and social circles, I'm imagining, right?
Imaginary what's count, yeah.
Yeah, they do. But then like you look at modern, it's like, okay, we have the COVID era. You have people who are mostly interacting with people through social media and all this kind of stuff. And then it's like, even if you're a gamer, like, because when I grew up, it was like, oh, let's go have a LAN party, right? Let's hang out. Let's do this. Yeah. Play Smash with your buddy. You have the
Oh my
console
God.
games, all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Nowadays, it's like, oh, like I'm hanging out with my friends and it's all digital, right? And it might just be a voice. You don't even get to see them or anything. I do feel like that's missed a lot. And do you think at their age you were more emotionally mature or no? Were you the same?
Me, myself, personally, I would have liked to think so. I think I had the insight of why I was feeling all these things. Like, I knew, but I didn't know how to appropriately express it. And I think going through graduate school, clinical graduate school, and they make you reflect and think and teach you how to talk and express things, I think that really helped me. So I would say, like, maybe I wasn't as mature with my execution, but in my head, I could kind of understand myself.
What about you, Robert?
I'd like to think I was more mature at that age. Part of the beauty of esports is that how it like permeates through the different like age brackets. You have coaches who are older having to work with people who are Zoomers and who grew up. God, I remember getting internet. Like I remember
Dial-up,
coming to
baby!
the house.
Dude,
Yeah.
I used to get free minutes in cereal boxes for like AOL or whatever, you know?
And like
This is one we had like three-way calling, and you're on the internet. Your mom was calling you to like make rice, and you couldn't do it, and she come home with rice not made, and you couldn't call you until like you get beat up. Just me? Oh, no, you wooden spoon? No, okay, traumas.
I remember having to choose between a phone and TV channels.
What'd you pick?
Well, I chose the TV, but mom said we're getting a phone. Things that I remember internet coming. I remember getting my first computer. I remember getting my first phone when I was in high school. You know, you can meme about like iPad kids and stuff, you know, and whatnot. But like, I didn't have technology until I was older, and I think that kids now they just get so used to distractions in their life that they're perpetually like attached to that distraction in their pocket or on their screen. And at a certain point, like finding your social circle is really easy online. Like you mentioned, Casey, like being on Discord and having like all your friends in a list that you can speak to that instantly contactable instead of like, oh, I got to pay 40 cents a minute for my mobile phone or every
10 cents a text?
yeah. It's like I'm filling up the entire text. I'm getting my money's worth. But like it's just so easy to connect with people, and I think that you need to have face-to-face contact with your contacts in order to maintain like stronger relationships. You can only have a certain number of like really strong relationships, and then auxiliary relationships, like people who have 1,000 people on Facebook. It's too many. You can really hold a certain number of actual friendships, and then of those you have to top them up with face-to-face as much as you can. It's just so too easy to have relationships online. Even people who live in a city and maybe their entire friends group is not even in their state, for example. It's like, oh yeah, I've got lots of friends. It's just I'd never meet them. You know, I work, I come back, and then I socialize on my PC. Like that's fine. I think that's just growing and developing with the technology that we have right now. There's no problem with that. I think that the only issue from my POV would be like the face-to-face in-depth conversations that you might have. It's just more intense in person. You can have great conversations online. You can go deep in conversations. You can have that. But I think if you ever have an opportunity to meet up with people, you should always do it. Go to the LAN, go meet up somewhere, double check who the person is you're meeting up with beforehand. Be safe. Just try to figure out like how you can actually like do those things. And I think for esports, you can definitely hear it when they're fully remote online, how difficult it is compared to when they're actually in person. How much more you can get done when you're in person. Like if we had cam off, for example, I wouldn't be able to see your expressions, Ryan. You're very expressive. I wouldn't be able to see how Casey reacts to something. It would just be based off of their voice. And you miss a lot of the nuances, even the nodding, which promotes me more to talk more and more. It's like, hey, he's digging this, right? Like I want to talk more to him now because he's giving me those affirmations. And I think in esports, you need to have that. Even if you're online, how can you juice that up? Cameras, for sure. Even jumping on 15 minutes beforehand for a pre-talk where it's not like, okay, guys, meeting at 12. It's like, no, let's jump in, players at 11:30. Let's hang out. Let's have like an open Discord. Hey, I'm playing solo queue. Jump in whenever. I'll be streaming in the Discord. Like that's how you can help juice up an online team. And I've worked with online teams, and there are just little tricks that kind of take them out of their comfort zone because 100% of their interactions are cam off, are like more relaxed. Coaches kind of have to look beyond that towards how can we make the guys feel a lot closer even though they're online.
The thing that you may really think about, even when you're saying like, yeah, why people are just sitting at their computers and they're physically next to each other, they're interacting with something on the screen that's not together, you know, physically together. It's still a version of parallel play. They're playing together, but they're not actually interacting together, like in the physical world. And I really thought about how that is more extended. You can still be parallel playing even though you're physically next to each other and think you're interacting and like, oh yeah, I'm so tired after work, I'm just gonna go home because I spent all day with my teammates. It's like, did you actually spend all day with your teammates, or were you just doing this thing and then you fought with these people on the couch after looking at this VOD?
At least in CSGO you have the fist bump, right? Like you have that interaction. I'm looking at you. But in League, there is no, I mean, outside of like small micro interactions, there's no difference between. We're working there. There's no difference between what happens when you're a remote team, when you play a scrim, and when you're an in-person team, because you are focused on the same thing. You're looking ahead, you're talking. Ideally, you know, you snap your fingers, the game's over. That's when you have all of the advantages of being in person that you should be exploiting and using and like leveraging. How can we just use this time better than Team Liquid or Cloud9, for example? Because the in-game thing is like, that's a shared experience, like you said, parallel play as much as possible. But how can we use the time afterwards to like really benefit as much as possible? I think you just have to get very creative in that sense. You have to drag people out of their comfort zone, because comfort zone for people, honestly, is I'd prefer to play from my room. Not everyone, but for a lot of people, I prefer to play from my bedroom if I can. Like if you told them that, they'd be super happy. It's like they'd wake up 5 minutes beforehand. They'd be wearing their sloth pajamas, and then they'll play scrims. But I think that they obviously value the in-person reviews and whatnot. It's just like, hey, I just feel more comfortable when I play the video game, when I'm in my kind of comfortable spot. But you have to like push them towards, oh, you got to play in the office. It's going to be maybe a bit cold, maybe a bit hot, maybe there's a glare in your screen a little bit. You're going to get used to playing on stage when, oh, I'm not used to playing with a crowd or lights or a camera guy or with makeup on. These are all things that you have to start preparing for. Is like the idea that being uncomfortable and playing well is as important as trying to play well while comfortable. Actually more important.
These are the things that people don't think about when they're like, oh, I want to go pro. Like, oh, it's just about playing the game good, right? It's like, oh, and also the social skills, and also doing the things that you don't want to do, like wearing makeup or like taking the pictures or doing all the social things and the meet and greets and the training and the reviews. That's all about being pro.
That's the fun stuff. I love that. Like that's the stuff that's different from playing at home. Players, in my opinion, have started getting more excited about like taking the ride to the studio. Listening to music, going there, getting makeup done, hitting the little smoothie bar. Like they enjoy that because it's part of the experience that maybe players took it for granted before. Maybe back in the day, I don't know. Maybe players who are older do, but I just see players that like kind of enjoy got my clean jersey. I'm enjoying today. It's a slower pace. It's a slow, kind of exciting lead up to playing on stage, and anything can happen when you're on stage. They should enjoy it. Like if you have a player who's not enjoying it, we're doing something wrong, or he needs to like change his approach to how he uses it. But it should be the most enjoyable part of your week. All your hard work leads up to that.
Is there any practiced uncomfortableness with any esports team that you've encountered where you're like, all right, in scrim blocks, we're going to have the heater on to like 100 every day. So that way, once you're there in front of the lights, it's going to feel like nothing. Like, is there any physical
teams have done that for
sure? Like you get uncomfortable chairs, all right, and we're gonna set the screen like 3 inches lower than where it should be because we want you to like crank your neck, like random physical uncomfortable things.
I'll talk about it, but like Ryan, have you tried it yourself, or have you heard about teams doing it?
I heard the converse for like Overwatch, where Korean players would just be like, they have to make them as comfortable or they get really, really upset. I think for me, when I'm trying to expose them to uncomfortable things, it's like team building things. Like, I'm gonna give you this thing to play in, here are the parameters and the rules, make it work. Now I'm gonna watch how y'all react. And then I'll see, okay, this person is doing this or complaining. Did they do this anywhere else in the game? What was that like when this person was complaining or they didn't want to do this or whatever? And so it's a team effort to kind of make them uncomfortable and then bringing it up to their attention and then seeing how that uncomfortability and how they react to that thing affects them in game. Then it's figuring out, okay, it's about education, it's about exposure. How can we like, do this more? So it's more of those things. Because if I try to disrupt their practice, then the coach gets mad because I'm not Big Daddy Robert Yip, the director. I have to kind of go with what the coach wants to do. That's how I kind of slide it in there.
Because I'll just say, because I have seen this in the world of traditional sports, where some teams, they will intentionally do random stuff. Yeah, they'll do loudspeakers. I've seen it like, okay, maybe it's tennis, you play with a tiny racket, it's like this big, so that way you can improve your accuracy, that kind of thing with your swing. Yeah, like there's a lot of like different things that they'll do to intentionally like overtax and make it uncomfortable, with the idea or the hope that once you get to game day, it's going to be just so much easier. Like in the military, they intentionally like sleep restrict you and have you do all this craziness. Let's see how you play with this, and if you can play well here, then you're going to play better when you're well rested, that kind of thing. Anyway, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Robert.
Oh no, I was actually thinking about the tiny tennis racket and be like, why not just try to be accurate with a normal tennis racket? I'm not sure how much carryover there is. I think that's the main thing for me is like, as I've looked more into like mental toughness, subjecting people to adversity or things that are mentally tough doesn't always have the effect. It doesn't always hit as much as if you're actually like subjecting them to things that are like, it's like more real. Like toughness for the sake of toughness is often not that great unless like the people want it or unless there's like some shared experience out of it, especially from like a team. Like, hey, we're going on a monster hike and it's going to be hard. Like, we're going to do that. And the only learning lesson is it's going to be hard. And I want you guys to finish it. That's it, together. Like, that's fine. We've done stuff like the playing like crowd noises or like TSM chanting noises like on loudspeakers while they're playing. Things like that I think are fine. Like I like subjecting. I like exposing them.
Yes.
I like exposing them to things that they will have to actually do like in the future, or like things that are different that make them think. So Ryan, like how monotonous scrims can be. You go, you sit down, you do the same thing. It's like Groundhog Day over and over again. Small things like, hey, we'll have a training day where you guys have to come in wearing your scrim clothes, and then we'll play the game. And then if you guys win 3 out of 5 games, like you can dress back into your normal clothes, for example. I've never had like players push back on that, and I think it's fun because it makes them a little bit more aware about like, oh, okay, today is like proper training day. We focus. The coaches pick the drafts for stage, etc. They look the part, and when you look the part, they feel the part. They do their hair up and everything like that, and it just like adds an extra layer of gloss on top of it to prepare them for the next day. It depends how far you push it. It just depends on that. Like I remember one time I got all their mice and keyboard and mouse pads and put them on a separate table from their desks so that they had to go and what you do in LCS, you walk on stage with your stuff in your hand and you set it all up. So they came down like, why is all our stuff here? I'm like, oh, like on LCS day, you're going to have to grab your stuff and set it up and make sure everything's good. And they're like, oh, and they grabbed their stuff and they did it. Things like that. It's just a small thing. It's like a primer for what you're going to do. And that was like on the stage practice day, for example. Oh, today, like, there's an audio file. I want you guys to play it. It's like the white noise from LCS that I got. So you're going to play with the whole time. So it forces them to speak louder. I had a player come out of it going, oh, I want to play with this all the time because it's like the Pavlovian response to like, I'm on stage now. Right. And like he liked it. And small things like that, I think you can add into practice to change it up a little bit, to give you a different feeling. And if you get a different feeling, it's going to change your mindset. And if your mindset's different, it's going to like heighten your focus. Like, think about the kind of inverted U theory. Instead of them being like under aroused, it'll make them over aroused. If you do it all the time, it loses the effect. If you do it sometimes, it can kind of help. Those things like can be like useful as an aid depending on the players that you have. I know other teams that they do some exercises before they play, so then when they sit down, they're kind of like in a more heightened sense, like their heart rate's going a little bit more. Your body can't tell the difference between anxiety and elevated heart rate sometimes. Let's see how you play. These are all just like things that just make practice, I think, more fun. I don't think being hard for the sake of being hard is great, but trying to make practice different or interesting, I think, is honestly the job of the coach, because coaches only have like a strong effect in the practice. Like, you can set things up. I'm going to pick Ryan, a champion he's like uncomfortable with. And it's like, hey, like this will happen or this could happen. You feel this feeling now and be okay with it than only dealing with it later on.
Yeah.
Exposure therapy, I guess, is the right one.
Absolutely. And then at the same time, I'm thinking with that, it's like, oh, well, I lost because of this. It's like, all right, well, I've already set up this thing for you to fail. And if you succeed, that's great. At the same time, the side task is, can you manage your mental through this frustration and push forward? Because if you can do that, that's exactly what I want you to practice, like pushing
Yeah.
forward and not paying attention or fixating on the things that are irritating, but always moving forward and finding that next win condition for yourself. We're doing mental practice today.
You might know that you have to do it, but you don't know if you can handle it. The 3 layers of confidence, like number 1, the biggest confidence boost is like if you've done it before. Number 2 is if you've seen someone else do it before. And number 3, if I tell you, hey, I think you can do it. I believe in you. So you're trying to basically give them a better source of confidence for themselves where they've actually done it. They know how it feels. They know how good or bad it feels. And hey, I survived. At the end of it, it was not a great experience, but I survived. Great. I know I can actually survive, which is your role, right? In a game, you just need to hang in there. Korean players use the term like, oh, what's your job? It's like, oh, hang in there or just hang in. Like my job is just to like
survive,
play weak side, survive. Like somebody's probably very good at that, but like otherwise you're just going in with that really poor form of confidence where it's like the coach says, yeah, you got this. Or you even tell yourself like, I got this, but you've not done it before. So
do I have this? I think I
Yeah.
got this.
and when you're in the moment, you're so focused on like actually surviving, you're not actually sure that you can. It's kind of like if you're kind of training for like a 5K or a 10K, it's like you can probably do it. Bringing people to the gym or doing things outside your comfort zone just to make sure that people survive. Number 1, make sure that they can do it. And then number 2, make sure they have fun for everything.
I think the fun part gets missed, especially as seasons progress and if they're not doing so well.
Managing relationships all through it, because if we're all not having fun together, right, we have to find the
Yeah.
person that is causing us not to have fun.
Like people underestimate how much losing affects teams. Every team from 1st to 10th, like when you lose, you feel really bad. Honestly, it's really tough, and you don't just kind of go, damn, I lost, and then you just load back up into the game again and practicing hard. And players actually get over it quite fast compared to what you'd expect. Which is like, you can look at it both sides. Number 1, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe they got over it so fast. Like they should really be feeling the anger of losing and like it should sit with them for longer. And then the other one is like, I'm glad they're getting over it fast because you know what? We're working 6 days in the week, and what did they do on their off day? Probably play more league. The more you dwell on something, the less bounce back ability or resilience you have towards what actually happened. And you're just shooting yourself in the foot if you're going to dwell on it for days or a week. You've got a game to do. You've got scrims to do. So try to get over it as fast as possible because that's your only recourse. As long as you are taking your lessons and changing your approach going forward, that's fine.
So we're talking about like relationships a lot with these teams and like within a particular team. What do you think is the minimum time that you should give a player or someone as part of this actual team, whether it be coach or whatever, before you say it's time to go? Because I feel like what I see in esports right now is the roster changeover is just crazy. Within a season, there's roster changeover. And it's like most teams do not want to carry a team and actually try to develop them. They would rather just be like, all right, screw it. Let's just like press the reset button and get a full new staff, right? Surely it'll work better this time. Like, is that the right approach? Or do you feel like, okay, we should at least give a player 2 seasons or something like these like multi-year contracts with people, which I don't really see as much anymore.
I'm going to field it to Ryan, but I'm going to just add a little layer before he jumps in and say that if you have a culture or if you have players that have been conditioned or shown that, hey, if I speak up about a teammate that I don't like and a change happens, that's going to be their go-to instead of actually trying to fix the relationship or the problem. They're going to immediately jump to replacement is what I should be doing. But I'd like to hear from Ryan on this one.
That's a really interesting question because the immediate thing that I thought about was COD. COD turnover is so insane.
I didn't want to name any names, but yeah.
Like the mid swap, the pre swap, like they can change out players so fast. And I think it's a little bit different because like the season is really fast. And at some points you kind of know like, okay, this is not going to work. At the same time, I think sometimes in League, changing players, the thought is, okay, if I change this player, we're gonna go, okay, it's gonna be fine. We got the problem out. They're gonna have a honeymoon stage, and it's gonna be like 3 months or 2 months or whatever. We'll ride that, and then we'll fire the coach or whatever if it gets bad again. And then once that happens, we'll have another honeymoon. But then you're not really fixing problems. You're just patching them up or just villainizing someone to get them out to boost camaraderie.
I feel like there's so much I feel like there's so much scapegoats going on rather than actually trying to resolve whatever the underlying issue is.
Yes. I mean, I would love to see teams stay together for a split or more, because I think if you actually spent the time like, all right, we're not the best always, but we actually have 5 players that are commit to, okay, we want to make this better. That's the thing I want to see, because I think that's when you actually begin to build dynasties and actual true synergy, because maybe it's like, it doesn't work well. It's kind of like the metaphor, maybe it's like, you have a crooked golf club, but you swing this crooked golf club and you've learned how to hit it onto the green. And I think sometimes it's like that with teams, like, hey, we all know the bad habits of this player. We know the good habits of these players, so we can kind of predict what they're going to do, and it works for us. But I feel like people are swinging this club. They say, oh, it's crooked. Fuck this club. Let's grab another crooked club. Versus trying to learn how to swing it. But that being said, sometimes you have to change the players because it just doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, there's a lot of times where there's like someone who's really toxic, or it's just like really not jiving with the rest of the team and what their goals are, and I'll fully understand that. But I've seen like a significant decrease in the amount of multi-year contracts that are happening.
Or if they do have a multi-year contract, they get bought out or sold, and then it's like the contract is like nothing permanent? Question mark. It's like, okay, I know they're getting paid for a season or two.
I don't like it. I don't like it is what I'm saying. I don't like it. Make a conclusion. No, I mean, true. Like, I think personally that's to the detriment of a lot of these teams. And just taking from parallel arenas from what I've seen is usually like traditional sports and the tactical setting, police and in military, to really build those like team cohesions. And yeah, you mentioned the dynasties, right? Of like some of these teams. It's built off of a couple key players who were there the entire time and really got to know and work well with each other, right? It's really rare that you have a dynasty built around one individual. Usually it's got to be at least two, right? I mean, you look at like Belichick and Brady or whatever, right? Like it's usually at least two players, or it could be coach and player, whatever. But like these two people who are there to like really set the foundation at a minimum. And in esports, it's just like a stark difference. And I feel like, I don't know if it's just the last couple of years or it's been a little bit weird in esports, but in general, I see that trend is just like it's moving in the opposite direction. And that concerns me a little bit for just changeover rosters or just like left and right. Or just like, oh, I was working with this player. And then I'll get a message from the coach, by the way, don't help out this player anymore because we're thinking of cutting them. And I'm like, you just brought him in. What do you mean? You know, like I just get these like little side messages and I'm like, this is so frustrating. Sorry. I mean, I'm just the nutrition guy. You guys know better than I do, but
it's hard. Like you mentioned, like Belichick and like Brady, for example, like there's only a few players that have, I guess, like Core JJ, for example, Blabber, for example. There are players on teams, Bjergsen on TSM, were that one player that was built around, and like they had changes in coaches, but like you could build around a player, but you can really only build around a player that, I guess Brady's different because like in American football it's like quarterback, but there are just teams that you can build around players in traditional sports that like they have their own gravitational pull where no matter what players you put on there, they're going to hold it all together. They are the best players in their regions, like for the most part. So you get what you pay for. If you can find a player that you can build around in the long term, it's great. It's like super cool.
I mean, it could also be two players. It doesn't have to be a player. Like, I mean, you got like Pippen and Jordan, right? You know, that kind of stuff. And,
I think in esports, the only differentiating factor is you have 5 players, 20% each.
Yeah.
If one of your players is a bad apple, that's 20% of your entire squad. That's a bad apple. If you have one player that doesn't want to practice, 20%. One player that goes home at 5, 20%. One player that is like a little bit toxic or aloof, 20%. It's almost like if I can get rid of this 20% that doesn't click, and if I can find one, we're whole again. We have Exodia. We can fix everything, right? It's perfect. Getting in that last piece is hard because most rosters have a half-life of like a year to 2. Then after 2 years, it kind of gets a bit stale. There's only been a few exceptions to that. You got to keep recycling while retaining some players. I think C9 do a really good job of that. No matter what move they make, they tend to just make it work. So kudos to them on like scouting and making sure that their culture is like from top down really strong. For other teams, it's just hard to figure out what clicks because there's an inherent shuffling of the deck and like, hey, pick a card, any card. You try to look for little marks on the card to see which one is like, I think that one is the jack. And then you pick it up, it's like a 2, like, okay, it wasn't what we wanted. And by the time you're like trying to find the missing pieces, the pieces that you already have, the more time you spend together, you're focused more on, you can only see what they can't do rather than what they're good at. And you kind of lose that spark or whatever worked beforehand. And you can lose a lot of patience while you're trying to figure out how to make the squad fully functional. The Crooked Golf Club is a great example of like, hey guys, this is our golf club. We need to like learn to sit with this and be okay with it because I'll give it to this guy who's a pro driver and he'll knock it 300 yards. You'll just be like, yeah, I'll use his stick. I'll use just like baseball bat and I'll knock the golf ball 300 yards. I'll do it because he doesn't care. He's just very good at it. One thing is that esports moves like very fast. You meet up, you do your team meeting with the squad, everyone's excited. I would say even just like positive, even not even neutral, positive about like what's going to happen. And then like, okay, let's go. You like sprint to your computer and you start playing the video games and you review. And over time, it just like erodes. Unless you've got a good team, then sure. But if you have a good team, all it does is helps you overcome difficulties a little bit better because you have that respect for each other. But if you have a team that's like struggling from the get-go, every interaction can be like a little bit tough. I just like a team to sit there in the beginning and be like, hey, this is our team. This is your coach. You guys are all excited to be here, right? Everyone's like, yeah, really excited. Like, you guys want to play your teammates? Yeah, I really want to play with my teammates. Like, why? Like, you want to play with your teammates? What are you excited for? Like, what are you most excited to do in the game, outside of the game? Build it up so that they have that shared sense of like, yeah, let's just remind each other why we are here now before we played a single game and why we're excited and why we should be excited going forward. How are we going to deal with conflict? How are we going to deal with problems? How are we going to deal with issues that we have differences between, like how we're going to practice? You talk about all of that before you do it because it's like going back to the confidence thing. I trust myself to be in the middle of a conflict situation and kind of like wade through it. But if I can prevent it, if I can do some preventative measure to make it easier for when it actually does happen, I'm down for that. But mostly just to get the guys thinking deeper about why they're here and the people around them. That's it. They're going to get lost in the sauce when it comes to the game. They're going to like deep dive in there, and it's like, you got to come up for air. It's like, nope, I'm going back down again. Finding those times, I think the best time to do it is the very beginning.
Yeah, I agree. And it's just funny having that conversation. It's like, oh, I don't like drama. It's fine. We don't no drama here. Let's not talk like.
We're a brotherhood. We're a family. It's like family fight. Family rip each other apart. So
yeah. And then it's like, okay, well, do you want to tell him what made you upset? No, he should know. Okay, do you want to tell him what you want instead? Oh no, I mean, he should do the opposite. That's what I want. Okay, you want to tell him? No. All right. So do you know how this is creating drama? Because now you're not saying anything. You're upset. You're giving him the cold shoulder. He's asking you. Now you're not telling him. You see how this is... Yeah, but if we talk about it, then we actually have a problem. Yeah, we don't talk about it. We have a bigger problem.
You're in the middle. You're like those old shows from the 90s. They have a relationship problem and then have some person mediating them. Brian's just like, well, you know, this it made Robert feel like this. He told me this. And Casey's like, well... Ryan, tell Robert this.
Yeah.
Did you ever do the thing where you're like, you send like some flowers and say that it's from the other?
Oh
you
my God!
From the other
they
player.
they want to meet you here. And they want to meet you here.
Yeah, esports would be like, okay, hey, that player that you have a problem with bought you a skin. Isn't that so nice?
Yeah. He bought me this coffee.
Yeah.
My wallet's empty, completely empty.
He wants to meet you in the middle of ARAM.
But seriously, it's full circle. Now we're talking about it. It's like, yeah, we can create these teams, or when working with people, at the end of the day, we're not working with players, we're working with people. And we're dealing with human problems, especially when it comes to teams. So once we form the team, after that, it's, okay, can we be good humans together? How can I teach these people social skills, be aware of what they're doing and how what they're doing affects other people, or how even what they think about themselves or doing to themselves affects them, and then the people around them too. Esports is just a side parallel step from whatever you're doing in life and how you interact with everybody else, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, think about how you feel when you play like your friends in League, for example. That's how you want it to be all the time. But then think about how, if you're playing
my rank games go.
Yeah, how your rank games go. And like, you know, that's just something that you can't really control. But like games can be like that, where people are trying hard. I mean, you can get a rank game where people try hard, but you just get blasted. For ranked is great. You can just go next and find a new team. And ranked is like grapes, new opportunities. Anything can happen. Like
that's right.
The fruit of choice. But imagine you're playing ranked and you keep on ending up with the same guy that inted you or the same guy that's not good on your team over and over again, no matter how much you press find game. That would be frustrating. And that's kind of like what it can be sometimes. Rather than run away and click find game or go next, you actually have to fix your problems.
That's right. That's so much easier.
Just go ARAM instead. Yeah.
Just go ARAM. That's always the answer.
Go next game completely, right? Like just play Fortnite or something. Dude, I lost track of time. I know that you guys stuff going on later on today. So thank you so much for spending so much time with us.
Oh, it was awesome. So much fun.
Whenever you're free and want to come back, let us know and we'll do it again. This was super fun. I enjoyed the conversation.
I came for the munchies, but stayed for the mind.
Hey, that's what it's about.
Oh,
that's what it's about, baby. For you, Robert, maybe some takeaways, some remembers, these things for the fans. What would you say are Robert's remembers, your final facts?
Remembers. Oh, God. I think just from what we spoke about, esports players are people. They have feelings, they have emotions, they feel good, they feel bad, they try their best. They are not who they are not. So they are not just copy and paste what other players in other regions do. And if they can't do it, say that they're bad. I think there's like quite a lot of players that work really, really hard. And I think when it comes to teams from top to bottom, like every team has their own unique style. Every team is trying to work with what they have resource-wise. I think transparency is big for me. Like I'm always down to answer questions about like processes and how we do things and generally just like value structure. I think it's really important for me. And like I've had successes in the past where it works and you try to replicate them in the future or in the present. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it doesn't take away from the fact that everyone's like trying really hard. So it was nice to jump on a show and like chat to you guys about it and get your perspective on things. I really, really enjoy talking to other people in esports that are like not even like-minded, but like just have opinions about and want to talk about the things that I'm really passionate about. Yeah, there's a lot of negativity currently going around, especially with LCS and things like that. But there's a lot to be positive about. There's a lot of good people. The Game Changers program itself that was on recently was amazing. And just like take a little portion of that and spread that around to like everyone else. And I think we'll be doing really well for ourselves.
Yeah, I think we all three of us truly are passionate about just the world of esports in general, right? Like we do want what's and the people in it too. And there is some little bit of negativity going around recently, and hopefully we can change some thoughts and things. And with you guys, at least, you guys can help them have better
Stop
minds and
selling
better
yourself so
relationships.
short, man.
I just tell people what to
do the
eat.
thing.
I just tell people what to eat. All
I
right, you
think
guys actually work
do
on the mental.
You do a lot of psych stuff because there's a lot of values and beliefs that are wrapped up in eating. And sometimes, honestly, when you start to change people's perceptions about food and what they can do to improve their performance, it makes our jobs easier too, because that's a foot in the door. Oh, I talked with Casey, and like he said, if I just think about this differently, or I ate a vegetable and that was my success for the week. Okay, cool. If you can eat a vegetable, how'd you do that? What'd you think differently? Oh, I was just, I thought, like, instead of thinking, oh, it's a chore, it's something that I wanted to do for myself. Okay, cool. What else do you want to do for yourself, man? Let's keep rolling. Let's keep rolling. Let's keep rolling.
Broccoli leads to success. That's what I'm taking from that.
Getting a t-shirt with that on it.
Yeah. Some of the things that I really liked was just reintroducing the social and the face-to-face. And I know, Ryan, you're a fan of like cameras always on when you're interacting with them, all that kind of stuff. I think that's huge. And I think it's something that I am guilty of just because my natural introverted nature, like I need to move back into that more. But the big takeaway that I took was it's not too late for us. So, it's not too late.
Golden League, baby.
I need you to send me that LCS file so I can get hyped, and I'll be blasting that on loud when I'm working and just be like, I'm getting ready, boys. So there it is.
That's my takeaway too. There was a chance. There's still a chance for us.
There's still a chance.
There's still a chance, baby. And the other thing was like, I want to continue thinking about and chewing on the active recovery for my brain.
Yeah.
Because I think that's a really cool concept that I can try to imply or employ, especially with players too. Like, hey, what else are you doing other than the game to exercise or recover instead of just playing Maple Story or like laying down doing nothing?
It's targeted.
Yeah, maybe. Or not going to the gym. Meow.
Mm-hmm.
So things like that. The last thought I'm having is, why the fuck did we not do this sooner, Robert? Like, bro, where have you been all our lives, man?
I know.
Long time lurker.
Dude, whenever you're free, let us know. We'll do this again. And,
Post Japan.
Post Japan, or maybe we're waiting for the vlogs, and I want to see the video of the guy splitting it. Maybe you can show us start with a slideshow. I'm down.
It'll just be Mind Munchies and just like a slideshow of Japan.
All the munchies from Japan. Yeah.
Oh my god, I need to take a lot of photos.
I'll try to narrate. I'll just make up stories for all the different photos.
That's perfect. I won't have any backstory at all.
Lastly, dude, where can people find you? Shout yourself out. Yeah, what you got coming up?
Coach Yip on Twitter and Instagram, I think. But I'm not really active on Instagram with that one. But definitely Coach Yip on Twitter. And my DMs are always open for people that have questions.
And then Casey, what you got going on, man, this week? Where can people find you?
At Casey Thomas RD is me on Twitter. I don't have other social handles, and I'm trying to get better about replying on the Twitter. So say hello, check it out, and more than happy to do what I can to help everybody out. Love talking about nutrition.
It's funny because you're like, Bree's like, oh yeah, come say hi to me, and you're like, oh my god, no, so many people are saying hi. It's hard for me to reply to everybody.
Dude, I say that every week, and no one comes and says hi to me. I'm sad, actually. Like I've got 0 people who say hi. I know. Maybe we'll see.
And then, as always, you can find me on Twitter at PsychSensei, Twitch is PsychSensei, and then YouTube's dropping, and all kinds of content dropping on the YouTubes or whatever. So find all that content on my website, PsychSensei.com, so you never miss any of those drops. But thank you for joining us for Mind Munchies +1, featuring Master Coach Yip of Immortals. And please be safe this week. And whenever something goes wrong, the tagline is, "That's ARAM, baby."
That's ARAM, baby. Peace out.
Take it easy. Pieces. Love ya. Bye.